Hello, hockey fans, and welcome to another edition of Coach's Corner of Michigan, an educational podcast dedicated to the promotion of high school hockey by interviewing coaches and players from various regions across the state. I'm your host, Andy Weidenbach. These podcasts will serve as a resource of information for current coaches and players, as well as for prospective student athletes considering playing high school hockey in the future. Today's podcast is brought to you by Stream Cortex for all your hockey needs. Our guest today is Mark Vellucci, head coach at Novi High School and current president of the Michigan High School Hockey Coaches Association. Mark, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Lou and Nick. It's a pleasure to be with you guys this morning. I look forward to not only reminiscing, but talking about what we're doing currently with the Coaches Association. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, we have a lot to talk about today regarding high school hockey, but before we do this, let's take a few minutes to reminisce and maybe take a walk down memory lane. In our days, you as a player and me as a coach back in junior hockey. So back then, let's go back to the late 80s. The game today is fast-paced. It's a lot of emphasis on skill. And, parents today, they might not believe us when we say hockey used to be like the Wild West. It was kind of crazy, and it was acceptable. I mean, it was the norm. Sure. Do you have any stories maybe to illustrate how different things were back then and compared to how things are now?
Well, definitely. I think in today's world, or high school hockey world, or hockey world in general, is that when there's a I won't say scrum, I'll say scrum, or a little bit of a kind of a pushing, shoving. That was the norm back then, along with dropping the gloves and fighting, and we had some bench clear brawls. I played for Conqueror from 1989 to 92, and you were my coach the first year, and had a great time and played with some great players back then. Eric Lindros was with us then, Brian Ralston, Jim Storm, a bunch of future NHLers, and it was a Wild West, definitely. The one story I vividly remember, it involved your son, Andy Jr. It was our second year playing, and we had a game in Indianapolis playing India Ice, and we had a big rivalry with them. They were they kind of prided themselves on being the big bad Philadelphia Flyers, Bruise Brothers type thing, and your son, being the wild and crazy player he is, started one of the best brawls in pregame history and probably North American junior hockey history. He started by shooting pucks on the other team's net while the warm-ups were going, and guys were getting a little pissed off about that. But then he started taking his patented slap shots. He was literally shooting slap shots at the other team's goalie, and that ignited probably about a 20-minute pregame bench clear brawl, and that was nuts. We all paired off. The tough guys paired off. I was with Jason Houle back then. He was a tough guy then, and it was nuts. The brawl ended. We got our fights out of the way, and then we literally went off the ice, zambonied, and then played hockey. And it was a chippy game, and it was just crazy times back then. And that was the type of norm. That was kind of the norm back then. I'm not saying every game was a bench clear brawl like that, but it was about showing intimidation and being tough. And I think our Conqueror teams had a little bit of both skill set along with some toughness, and but that's a story. Whenever I'm with your son and seeing him in person, we always bring up that story because it's pretty comical. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm proud of that. I started that, and just shining moments with playing juniors." But the best thing about those days, Coach, as is still stay in contact with a lot of those players back then. nowadays where our kids are playing hockey and ages are different. Some are playing against one another, but it's just it was crazy times back then. But it's good to see everyone, and talk like this about the old days. And that was one of the stories that I vividly remember. And I think we ended up winning the game. We didn't win too often down in India. I think we won 3-2. So I think part of that is thanking your son, Junior, for that. But it was fun.
Well, that's a new one on me. I haven't heard that one before, so thanks for sharing that. I'll have to bring that up when I see Junior later today because his boys are in. I think your son might be here in Florida as well, playing in a hockey tournament up in Clearwater. So I may get an opportunity to see your son play.
But, yeah, they're coming down tomorrow. So him and my wife are coming. I got to stay here and coach high school.
Beautiful. Anyway, segueing back to. Back in the days of junior hockey, I mean, obviously, when you played junior hockey, I mean, it was acceptable. It was the norm. I can't even remember in the 8 years that I coached junior how many fights or bench clearing brawls there were, but I would say hundreds of fights and at least 10 to 15 bench clearing brawls during those years. And it was acceptable. I mean, there was an element of self-policing back then. You know that. If somebody ran your goalie, you ran their goalie. If somebody picked on one of your players, you would pick on one of their players. I mean, it was an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth type mentality. And you were a big guy, and big guys were expected to play big. And I don't know how many fights you were in, but I would say a lot, probably more than you wanted. But, I mean, you did it. It was, part of the game. And that's all changed. I mean, it's way different now. I remember, some of the crazy things that we were involved in even before you played on our junior team. But, it's much better now. So I guess, you started coaching high school hockey in 2001, but you came out of an era when, junior hockey, maybe even high school hockey back then, it was crazy. I mean, there were a lot of crazy antics, dumb things, like you mentioned, shooting on the other team's goalie. So how have you changed as a coach? I mean, you came out of that era of craziness. You became a coach in 2001. Now you're coaching a high school team, which is an interscholastic sport. It's an extension of the classroom. There's sportsmanship is paramount. How did you transition from those crazy days to sort of high school hockey?
Well, one of the things I tell everyone is I'm a longtime referee. So I've been reffing. As soon as I got done playing a couple years of minors, I got right into reffing. My two older brothers, Perry and Pat, were reffing then for USA Hockey. And I started, I think, in 96, 97. And so I always tell people I'm so glad I became a ref before a coach because I got to see the other side of the equation. I got to see, because when I played and even when I was younger in my youth days, I we didn't get what we wanted. I let the referees know, and I had a little bit of a mouth on me, and I got a few misconducts here and there, and pissed off some of my coaches over the years. But so I kind of, obviously the first year coaching, I was coaching a couple of years of youth hockey, a couple of years of peewees and bantams before I got into high school, and so that helped too. And just knowing, just doing that. And I remember when I don't know if you remember this, Coach, but I remember when I got the job at Farmington, I met with you at Cranbrook one day, and we were talking about everything. And I asked you the best piece of advice I think any coach ever given me was, I said, what would be your best advice? He said, treat everyone the same. Treat every player the same, whether you're top players or your bottom end players, treat them the same. And I tend to think I've kind of stuck with that mindset and philosophy. And obviously it's more off the ice issues and stuff than on the ice. Obviously you play your better players more than your lower end players. But if one of my captains or one of my seniors acts up, I give them the same amount of punishment as a rookie or underclassman. So I think that was the best advice I ever got from a coach, and I appreciate it. I thank you for that, and I still to this day try to keep that philosophy in check.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think players, all players add value for sure, and otherwise they wouldn't be on your team. So you're going to try to treat them with respect, and I think you're right. I think if the best player on the team, cuts up and the punishment must fit the crime, I think the rookies respect that. I think they will respond positively. I think that's good advice for any coach. But
I also noticed that in juniors too. When you were coaching me, and Tom Vigiano my second year, and Bob Petrie my third year, and it was I learned. I didn't know it at the time, but after thinking or going back through memory lane and thinking, our better players, when they screwed up or did something wrong, they got punished, whether it was cleaning the toilets or something. They might not have got less ice time, but it was about winning and developing good character players back then. But it was I kind of, every year you learn something new, and that's a philosophy I take with coaching. I mean, just the other day something happened on the bench or on the ice that hasn't happened to me in a long time, or I don't actually never. And I'm like, what am I going to do about it? And I handled it, I thought, the way I thought, and my other coaches agreed with me then, and so it's kind of neat to go through that.
So let's talk a little bit about the Velluccis. So your dad was a basketball and baseball guy growing up, but
yep.
your mom worked for the OHL team when I was there. She was the education liaison for the Detroit Ambassadors. You mentioned your brothers Perry and Pat are both USA Hockey referees. Your brother Frank was a videographer for the OHL Ambassadors. Yep. Your brother Mike is an assistant coach with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yep.
Your sister Mary worked at the Oak Park Arena while she was attending college. And, of course, you have over 25 years coaching experience. Your parents have seen thousands of games. I think it's safe to say that we could classify the Velluccis as a hockey family.
Sure.
Your son now, Jacob, is playing hockey, so we have another generation of Velluccis coming through. Yeah. And I understand he's a pretty good player. He's probably 12 or 13 now.
12, yep.
So he's
13 in March.
Yeah, he's 7th grade, maybe 8th grade.
Yes, now? 7th grade.
So he'll be moving to high school, I'm sure, down the line here in a few more years.
Mm-hmm.
So your son is playing hockey, and when you grew up, how crazy it was. What are some of the things that I think parents can feel good about, how some of the positive changes that have taken place, whereas you don't have to worry as much anymore with the safe sport and coaches doing background checks and things like that. Can you touch on that just a little bit, how hockey's changed for the better to maybe protect some of these younger kids and make sure that they're safe?
Yeah, I also help out with my son's team too as a assistant coach, and obviously I'm there when high school isn't in play. I'm not going to be able, unfortunately, not going to be able to go down to Florida this week, which I really, really wish I could. I'd rather be down in Florida weather where you're at than Michigan weather right now. But either way, it's changed a lot in the sense of the skill sets changing, the mindset, not just players, but I think the parents and the coaches. It's a lot more about skill development these days than I think in years past. You have to be able to skate. You have, the hockey IQ. We all use the word hockey IQ. I'll be that biased dad and say my son has really good hockey IQ. Maybe more learned it from his mom's side of the family than his dad, but that's the way it's changed. I think it's more emphasis on skill. Obviously, with all the new rules in place, not only through USA Hockey but high school hockey, with the hook-in and the check-in and the emphasis on player safety that Michigan high school hockey really emphasizes. I think that's the biggest thing that's changed from when I started coaching in 2001. I think there was still a little bit of the Wild West days. My teams have never had a brawl. We've had a couple skirmishes here and there, one-on-one, but nothing. That's one of the things I pride myself in as a referee too. Is my kids know that I'm a ref too, and sometimes I kind of side on the side of refs over my players because I know if the player takes a stupid penalty or dumb penalty, then as a referee, I sometimes. That's probably the one thing I need to work on a little more. I sometimes I'm a referee on the bench too, but I think that's good because I'm trying to help the players understand that hey, it's either it's a penalty or not, and if I disagree with the penalty, then what I tell players all the time is I've never, as a referee, I've never had a player or a parent or a coach change my mind about a call. So save your energy, save your breath, and just play hockey and worry about that. So I try to use those experiences of reffing with coaching and sorry, I'm kind of getting off the there topic, but that's the biggest thing. I think just the Michigan high school hockey emphasis on player safety. I got to do a background check every year for high school, as I do as refereeing too, and it's just that's the world we live in. That's what we have to do as coaches, and I'm glad better be safe than sorry, so to speak, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned something. You came out of an era when fighting and bench clearing brawls were acceptable. You were a tough guy. I mean, you played big. I
don't know about that.
you did what you had to do. I mean, you're being a little modest here, but anyway. So now you're coaching high school hockey or you're coaching youth hockey, and you mentioned your team's never had a bench clearing brawl, never had a fight, whatever. And I came from that same era. So when I coached junior hockey, and you played for me, you know how it was.
Mm-hmm.
We had lots of fights, lots of bench clearing brawls. We already mentioned that. But when I transitioned to high school hockey in 1993, I came out of the OHL, and that's a pretty tough league, pretty tough place to play. And in my 26 years at Cranbrook, we never had one single fight and not one game disqualification in 26 years.
That's awesome.
So people, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Like we mentioned, high school hockey is an extension of the classroom. You have a lot of responsibility. Sportsmanship's paramount. And back in the day, we used to have initiations in junior hockey, and some of the stuff was beyond stupid. And now you get into high school hockey, and everyone agrees, that initiations don't work. I mean, anytime you cross the line there, it just puts a wedge between your veterans and your rookies.
Sure.
And, the initiations we had on the bus, I remember, we would do something stupid, but then when we got to high school hockey, everything changed, right? Like,
for sure.
No more nonsense. And the initiation we had in high school hockey was the rookies would sing a song on the way to Calumet. I mean, that was an initiation.
Yeah.
They'd have to come up with a song. Maybe some guys would sing a ballad or something, and everybody would laugh, and some guys were off key and whatever. But I mean, that was the extent of the initiation. So instead of driving a wedge between the veterans and the rookies, it was all in good fun, and everybody had a great time. But you mentioned, Eric Lindros briefly. Lindros stayed at your house.
Yeah.
He billeted there for, I think, 4.5 months
Mm-hmm.
while he was playing junior hockey for the Ambassadors. And I had an opportunity to coach Eric, along with a lot of other great hockey players, Mike McDonald, Doug Waite, Brian Ralston, Patty Peak, Todd Harvey, a lot of first-round draft picks. But Lindros was special. I mean, you lived with him. What would you tell a kid that has dreams and aspirations of playing in the National Hockey League? What did you learn from Eric? He stayed at your home. He was a teammate of yours. He was a special guy. But what could you tell kids that are listening, like what he did, some of the things that he did and how he approached the game and how organized he was about his schoolwork and everything? What advice would you give a kid that is really passionate and wants that?
So great question, Andy. And obviously we're getting up there in age, and not every one of the players that come through our programs now or my programs remember him. They were just being born at the tail end of his career and stuff. But the one I always tell, I tell a story about his work ethic. He was the hardest worker, and if I was a little bit smarter back then, I probably would have tried to have done more of the stuff he did. But he sacrificed so much. One, he was a straight A student. He actually cared more about schooling, and I think that's from his mom and dad, than hockey at the time. He was all set. You probably know the story. He was all set and going to Sault Ste. Marie, and got drafted by Sault Ste. Marie, and the main reason he didn't go there is because it was far away from school and travel and all that, and so that's one of the reasons he came to Concord Ambassadors and played juniors. He was going to go to Michigan. We had Red Berenson and Larry Pedri and Mel Pearson calling our house all the time, because that was Eric's plan, to go to Michigan as soon as he was done with hockey or high school, and play with the Masters. But yeah, the work ethic was unreal. Like he didn't party. Well, I won't say he didn't party. He partied a little bit with the boys sometimes, but like he came home from school and got right to his homework. Went right to practice 4:30 till the 6, and then came home and just did schooling, and his dedication. And I use the word sacrifice because I don't think the kids today realize how much you have to sacrifice, especially in today's world where there's so many more things to do. You got your internet and social media and all the other activities that a player can do. That back then it was just play hockey, go to school, and but his work ethic was, I think, I always tell people he worked harder in practice than in the games. And maybe you agree with that, or you've seen it. I mean, you saw it for 3 straight months. And that's the one thing I always tell people and remember is he practiced harder than he played or in the games, in my opinion. His desire and passion for the game and wanting to be the best. I mean, he worked on, remember when he came in the summer for a couple of weeks, he's like, hey, can we get some ice somewhere? And we went to Southfield Beechwood Arena and did an hour and a half skill session, just him and I and a couple other kids and stuff. And, it was just, it was amazing. And him and my mom still keep in touch. Him and I haven't talked in a while, but I saw him down in 97 when they we're playing Detroit in the Stanley Cup Finals. But yeah, that's the biggest thing I got out of him. And another funny story on him is the first day. He never been to the States. His first week from home, his first day in Michigan. He comes to Michigan, and he's come to Detroit thinking back then it was the murder capital of the world, and he was, he was 15, 16-year-old young man and never been away from home. And the first day he came, he sat in our upstairs bathroom at home and just sat on the toilet and just kept flushing the toilet over and over because my mom and I were out getting food for him and stuff like that. Funniest thing is, with my mom, we heard about him on a Friday, and on Monday he was living at our house. So it was kind of interesting about that. And I'm sure you were a part of that negotiations and knowing about that stuff. But yeah, he was scared shitless about living in Detroit and being in Detroit and being away from home. So he also had, my mom couldn't find a knife of hers for the longest time. And needless to say, when she was in his room one day, he had it under the pillow because he was worried about getting robbed. And it was just it's kind of a funny story, but yeah, he was great. I'm sure you got stories on him in the practices that he did, and I know he brought the practice energy a lot. And I remember the game against Bloomfield Jets. He had 4 goals and 6 assists before the second period was over, and he got kicked out for fighting. They finally jumped him and had a big fight with him, and I always tell people, I think he played like 15, 16, 17 games with Contour. He had like 52 points and 125 minutes in penalties before he, got traded to Oshawa and stuff. But I can go on and on. I know you and I were, my mom were in his book, Fire on Ice, and you had a nice chapter in there about talking about him and his work ethic and all that stuff. So it's a trip down memory lane for me there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I mean, Lindros, he set the bar really high in practice. I remember, we had good players on that team. Jimmy Storm played in the NHL. Pat Peake was a first-round pick. Ralston was a first-round pick. We had Lindros on that team. And I remember in the first practice, like, he wouldn't stop until he heard a whistle. Like, if the puck deflected in the corner, I remember that first time he took a shot on net, the puck deflected in the corner. Most guys, would stop. The puck's dead. He didn't hear a whistle. He went in the corner. He ran over Derek Burkhart, almost killed him. We're like, what are you doing, man? He goes, I didn't hear a whistle. He goes, I'm still playing until I hear a whistle. And I think that, Ralston and Peake, they were great players. No, there's no question about it.
Yeah.
But, to have Eric Lindros around, I think it pushed those guys to be even better. I think he was, like you said, he made all the sacrifices. He was super organized. He was a great teammate. Yeah. Guys loved being around him.
Yeah.
But
do you remember the game against Windsor?
Oh, yeah. We're a tier 2 team. We're playing the Spitfires in the OHL, and he challenges their bench. And he's 16, 17 years old. He's tough as nails. Yeah. But I remember he used to carry around like a little spiral notebook. And in that notebook, he would write down, workout from 6 to 7. He might put in there study from 7 to 8. And then he might have another entry like from 8 to 9. Time to relax and catch my breath or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I remember he was super organized. Yep. And, he made a lot of sacrifices. So, I'm down here in Florida coaching, and the kids down here aren't exposed to things like that. Like up in Michigan, we get exposed to players like Eric Lindros and Patrick Kane and, Dylan Larkin and Zach Berwinski. Those guys play in Michigan. We see a lot of those guys, and we see the sacrifices. Our players see the sacrifices they make, and I think it's important. They're good. They're good role models, and they didn't get to where they were from being lazy. I can assure you of that.
Sure.
So in high school hockey, when you get a kid on your team with that kind of work ethic, he doesn't have to be an NHL first-round pick. But if he's got that energy, brings that energy every day, he works hard. That's a coach's dream for sure. Yeah. And when we get those players, it sure is a nice reward. I
don't know about you, Coach, but when I have players like that, like those are the players that you obviously gravitate to a little bit more. And a number of players I still keep in contact with like that, and mainly because of how they're not only brought up, but their character, but their work ethic. And, I don't know how many graduation parties or weddings or, you've been invited to, but that's been a lot for me. And, that's why we coach. That's why I coach high school hockey. I think it's the biggest thing is camaraderie and the brotherhood, so to speak. And, I've been offered to coach AAA teams over the years, and it's that, I don't want to get in the whole public or AAA and high school thing, but it's just that's why I've stayed in high school hockey. It's the best in Michigan, and every year is different. You got good teams, you got not so good teams, but it's the relationships you build, and I think that's the biggest thing of why high school hockey in Michigan is the best.
Yeah, you're part of your school. It's something bigger than you, right? Like, you have more responsibility for sure when you wear a jersey that says Novi High School on the front. And, it's really important, right? You represent more than just yourself. You represent the entire Novi community, the education, the school, the student body, your teammates. You're held to a higher standard. Your responsibilities in the classroom are bigger. Your behavior is monitored. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I think that the lifestyle of a high school player is pretty hard to beat, right? It's
Sure.
You practice Monday through Thursday, you play a game on Friday, you play a game on Saturday, you take Sunday off. That's pretty typical. But the cool thing about it is you're practicing. Most high school teams practice between 3:30 and 5:30 or 3:30 and 6.
Yeah.
So you're home at 7:00. You're in your own community. There's not an excessive amount of travel.
Yeah.
I think the lifestyle of a player in high school is pretty hard to beat. It sort of mocks a college schedule without the travel.
Sure.
So I think that's a huge benefit. Can you tell us a little bit about, what's the state of high school hockey? What's the state of the game now?
Well, I think we're in good shape. I think the biggest thing I've noticed, and probably in the last 10 years, is the amount of players leaving travel hockey. Not just AAA teams, but travel players to play high school hockey. And for those reasons you listed, the brotherhood, less time away from home, the travel. One of the things we're working on in the Coach Association, we're working on, put an article together about the difference between high school and travel and the pros and cons. And I think with high school, as we practice more than we play. I think that's a huge advantage. Nowadays, I think kids want to just play games and not practice as more. But as Allen Iverson said about practice, we're talking about practice, right? And we practice more than the travel teams. I think the travel hockey is like 2-to-1 ratio, where high school is 3-to-1, and you get to work on all facets of the game. I think one of the things the MHSA is going to do is they're talking about letting high school coaches, run practices in the fall too. So try to compete a little bit more with the travel teams that are starting in August and going through March, where we go from November to end of February, early March. And I think that's the biggest thing. We're talking with Cody English from the MHSAA, and we're working with him on getting that changed. And there's a lot of other things we talked about with the association too. And this is my last year as on the board. As this will be my second year as president, and got a great board. And one of the things we talk about is that right now we have the 4-player rule in the out of season, where we can only work with 4 players. For my program personally, I do something in the summer, fall, and winter. And spring, I let them, take off, go play other sports, baseball, lacrosse, track and field, whatever, golf. I actually coached the golf team at Novi too, and I just got that gig a couple years ago. So, it's just we're working on a lot on stuff like that with the state, and I can keep going on that kind of things. What we're doing is not only for players but for coaches. We also do a new coach mentorship program where any first or second year coaches that join the association, the board sets aside a night and does a Zoom with them. And the biggest influence, or the biggest thing I think we've done in the last 5 years is coaches education. From the day you were first president of the Coach Association to where we're at now, it's just we're trying to build the game. We're trying to get more players in. We're trying to get more coaches. You retired a few years ago, and you brought other coaches in. We're trying to get, kind of like what we're doing with referees, trying to get new referees in. We're trying to get new coaches in, and a lot of the coaches, new coaches, the last couple of years have been former high school players. I fortunately have a couple high school players, former high school players, coaching. Chris Newton at East Grand Rapids coaches them. He was a player for mine in 08. And his assistant, Grant Newton, no relation. He's a former player from 2010. Had Brad Levick take over for at Farmington when I left Farmington a few years ago, a former player, and Chris Genron. So, but trying to get off topic, I apologize there. But things we're doing like that with association. We're running. With COVID, we started doing a lot of Zoom meetings. We do a coaches clinic or coaches series where we got NHL coaches and some other coaches talking with our coaches in Zoom. We just did a Zoom last night with Tim Turk. He's a skill shooting development guy that works with NHL players. He works with Larkin. He works with Stamkos, Crosby. Told an unbelievable story last night. He had Crosby, who's been playing with the same length of stick for years. He convinced him to add on 1.5 inches to his stick, and Crosby's 35, 36 years old, and just little things like that. So we're trying to build up the game through coaches development, and apologize, I'm going all over the place here, but kind of honestly, Andy, I'm real excited about what we're doing as a board. Dave Mitchell, Bob Hall, Ryan Osmacher, Don Wright, and Mike Quint are all on the board with me, and so we've just done so much. We did with COVID. We used to host, or before COVID, we'd host all-state banquet with John Castine, and we did a couple virtual online banquets the last couple of years that were great, and we're recognizing all-state players just like you did today, and we're getting them awards, and we're in charge of that, and it's just a lot going on. It's a lot, and it's all for high school hockey, and so that's where we're at.
Well, our next segment was going to be on the Coaches Association. I think I had 10 questions, and I think you answered them all. So that's good. You made my job a lot easier. But you did mention a couple things that I think are important about high school hockey. Number one, the practice-to-game ratio. So the practice-to-game ratio is about 2 to 1. So you get 2 practices for every game, typically.
Yeah.
And so if you play, a 25 or 30 game season, you're going to get a lot of practice time, which is going to make you a better player. There's also another thing you mentioned. There's also a lot of continuity between academics and athletics in a high school environment. So, when we do our schedules as coaches or athletic directors, we know when the homecoming is. We know when there's special events in the school. And we try to do our schedules accordingly to make sure that the kids can be a part of school activities or academic things that are going on so that they don't fall behind and they get to have a good high school experience. So that continuity is really important. Yeah. And I think that's worth mentioning. Yeah. The other thing that used to be a big deal back in the day when I first started in high school hockey in '93, everybody was worried about exposure. Oh, yeah. And so in 1993, I wrote a letter to the MSHAA. The guy who was in charge of it back then was Jerry Spengros. He was a football guy. And we started a preseason league in 1993. We had 10 teams in it. And it ran from September 10th to November 1st. Mm-hmm. And, that was a good thing for sure. That gave kids that didn't play a fall sport an opportunity to skate in an environment where it was safe. We had games. I think we played a 15-game schedule and practiced and all that other stuff. The only thing was, as a coach, a high school coach, you couldn't be involved in it as far as you couldn't go on the ice and all that sort of thing. But anyway, those type of preseason leagues started popping up all over the state. That was a good thing. So exposure was one of the big knocks on high school hockey. You don't play enough games. There's not enough exposure. So having these preseason leagues increased the number of games. And then there was showcases that popped up all over the state. There's the MIHL showcase. There's a public showcase. There's a showcase up in Gaylord. I think they call it the D3 showcase. There's a few other ones around the state. I don't remember all of them. But, now these kids are getting, more games, more exposure, a longer season. And, it sort of filled the void, right? Like it answered those questions. So now in high school hockey, a typical kid, if he didn't play a fall sport, he might play 50, 55 games and, maybe be involved in one or two showcases plus the state tournament if his team advances. So there's plenty of exposure. The kids that are good enough will be seen. You know that, I know that. That's the message that all high school coaches are trying to send to their parents and players is, high school hockey is not a dead-end street. No. It's an opportunity to improve your game and get better. Is there anything else that, you want to talk about as we wrap this up here?
Yeah, on that note, my Novi team just played in the Trenton Showcase, MHL Showcase, I should say, in Trenton, MHL Showcase. I apologize, but there was a crap load of scouts there, Andy, and they were watching Michigan high school hockey players, and they're, everyone. The biggest debate I think you have is between travel and high school is not enough exposure. Well, besides the showcases during the season, you have the preseason stuff. Your league is great. I know scouts come and watch your the Cranbrook League there and watch the players there. You got the MDHL development team and league that plays out of Kensington Valley. That's been around a long time. You and I have worked in that program too. And then you got the MHA run by Rick Gadwa from Heartland that puts teams together and gets goes to showcases, go to AAA showcases. They both go to Minnesota, both travel around the country and get high school players exposed. And I think that's the biggest thing that's changed in the last 10 years is that there's more opportunity for players to get showcased, high school players. And then you got Team Michigan in the spring that goes to Minnesota and run by Don Wright, who's the GM. And I think Dave Mitchell and Ryan Osmacher from Salem and Stevenson run the senior and the junior team. And I'm a big proponent. I think we could bring two senior teams there and two junior teams. I think there's enough good players, good talent in Michigan high school hockey that we can not just have one team, but we can have two teams at each level. And you look at if you go at our Michigan Hockey Hub, I believe Craig Peterson from Saline and Stevenson has done articles on where no place to play with high school hockey in Michigan because of how many players we've moved on to the next level. And I've been a part of Team Michigan a few years ago. I went on a couple of trips to Minnesota, and they had pretty much probably 20 D1 college teams in attendance scouting. Probably every team in North America and every team in the USHL had a scout there. And then you had your other scouts from the ACHA. I mean, there was obviously more scouts there than fans, and it was because they wanted to see Michigan high school hockey players along with Minnesota and North Dakota and Massachusetts and Wisconsin. And, so I guess the biggest thing I want to relay to any player that's thinking, hey, I get more exposure in travel than high school. It's not the case anymore. Scouts know you can call it a hidden gem over the years that Michigan high school hockey was or is, but word's getting out and see how many players, even former high school players that are playing in the NHL or played in the NHL. And it's not just about going to the North American League or USHL. They're going to play ACHA club hockey, which is great. And they go play NA3, which is still playing. There's so many more opportunities for players to keep going that I guess that's the biggest thing I want everyone to realize. And I think our coaches, and that's one of the things we're doing as a coach association is, making them aware and put out a monthly newsletter and let them know what's going on, when Team Michigan tryouts are and when other things are going on. So yeah, it's getting better and better. More players, more teams. I think there's a big issue we're having with co-op teams and stuff like that. But I think we're working with the state on that, and there might be a new division realignment with all the teams and stuff coming up in a year or two. But it's moving forward. back in the day, probably, changes weren't, it took a 2-3 year window for things to be changed. And even then, it was really hard to push through. Where now to be honest, I think we got a great working relationship with Cody Inglis, a former high school coach who has been there, has seen it, and there's a lot of red tape you got to go through. But the communication, I think that's the biggest thing. We're communicating more with MHSHCA, and they're talking about changes with seeding. The Final Four, the semis are going to be seeded where coaches and ADs are going to get involved and trying to get better matchups. And it's just a lot going on, and I'm glad to be a part of. I will be glad when my duty is done after this year to spend more time with family and stuff like that, and be around my son. But yeah, it's just I think that's the biggest thing I want everyone to understand is how much better high school hockey is getting, how many more players are playing, and coaches are getting better, players are getting better, and it's a great time.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that totally. There's a lot better coaches now than there ever was. I look at it as, I would say in my world, you're a young guy, but in reality, you've got 25 years under your belt already. But there's guys behind you that are coming in that have played the game at a high level. And the other thing I think is really critically important is the involvement. Like, you're involved as the president of the Coaches Association. I was the president of the Coaches Association back in 2003. I was on the National Rules Committee. And back then, there weren't a whole lot of guys volunteering to, for the greater good. But now there's a lot of young guys and a lot of good coaches and a lot of good hockey people like yourself that are involved, that have taken the plunge and, been members of the Coaches Association or the National Rules Committee or part of these, Team Michigan, some of the other things you mentioned. And, there's a lot of people involved now. There's a lot of people from all over the state, good hockey people, pulling on the line the same way to get things done for the greater good. And I think, the MSHA, our relationships with the MSHA, as you indicated, are a lot better. The MSHA was always very slow to move on change.
Sure.
Just to make some of the small changes might take 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
Whereas now I think, things are moving along a lot quicker. And I see the needle moving in the right direction. I totally agree with you. I'm down here in Florida, and I'm sort of I don't know, detached from high school hockey. The day-to-day operations.
Sure.
But I can tell, things are good. Things are getting better. I know that you, as a president, make a lot of sacrifices because I've been in your shoes.
Sure.
And as long as we have people to fill the void when you leave, and I think we do. Dave Mitchell, you mentioned, and Mike Quint, and some of those other guys you mentioned are all good hockey guys. So congratulations on everything you've done, and on behalf of all the players and parents in high school hockey, thank you for everything you've done for high school hockey. And hopefully when you retire from the Coaches Association, you'll spend more time watching your son develop. And I'll be down here in Florida. I may even get a chance to see him play. I don't know. I haven't seen the schedule yet. I think the boys start on Wednesday, but if I get a chance, I may stop in and say hello to your wife. And
please do.
And wish your son good luck. But anyway,
I want you to give an honest assessment from Coach Weidenbach, Senior, about his skill set and anything that you can see. And he needs to work. He definitely needs to work on skating. So I might come down there in the summer and have him do some of the Coach Weidenbach's power skating school.
Coach Weidenbach's legs are shot. No more power skating from me. But I think I tell my players here in Florida, there's three kinds of players, right? There's the average player. He wants to be left alone. There's the good player. He wants to be coached. And then there's the great player. He wants the truth. And
awesome. True.
the guys who really want it, you mentioned it. They're willing to sacrifice. They're willing to work hard. They're organized, and they want the truth. Give it to me straight. What do I need to do to get better? So, with all that being said, I think you're more than qualified to give your son a fair assessment. But if I do see him, I will let you know what I see. But I'm sure he'll be a fine hockey player. I know he's in the development stages right now. He's just a young kid, but there's a long history there in the Vellucci family, so I'm pretty sure he's going to be fine. But again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. This has been fun to reminisce a little bit. We couldn't dive deep and peel the onion back too far. Back in those days of junior hockey, I think we could probably all be arrested for some of that nonsense that went on. But thank God that's all changed.
Yes.
And again, thank you for your time, and good luck this season with your team and the Coaches Association and everything you're doing for high school hockey. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Coach, thank you very much. Thank Lou and Nick and all you guys for what you do, and we'll be in touch.